Hello. I apologize ahead of time. I have a very bad cold. I was fine all day yesterday. About 6 o'clock, I started sneezing. I couldn't stop sneezing, so I think the cold has overtaken me. But I had promised Tina Butts that I would do a little video. This is not the least bit weight related. It's just a little bit about getting to know me a little better for my new subscribers. Um, it started long, long ago on September 7th on a cold summer evening in 1950. No, I'm not going to go back that far. But that is when I was born, September 7th, 1950. Um, and I had the normal childhood growing up. When I was 10, my sister Mary set our house on fire and the house burned down. And we had to separate and live with different families. My parents had just bought a new home, but it wasn't ready to be occupied. And it kind of worked out because the people that bought my mother's house, my mother and father's house actually, were going to remodel it anyhow. So the insurance paid for the remodel, so they didn't have to pay for that. And we had a house that we were going to be moving into, but it wasn't, the 90 days occupancy. So I lived with a cousin for a while. And so we didn't live together. But my very first job I ever had was as a waitress. And my family teases me about this because I only lasted for 2.5 hours. But in my defense, I was a damn good waitress. But they found out I wasn't old enough to serve liquor. I lied about my age and I didn't think they'd ask for proof. But guess what? They wanted proof because you have to be 18 to serve liquor. I was only 16. So I lost that job after 2.5 hours. And so I always say that I was a waitress once. But my first, well, no, because then my next job I worked at J.L. Hudson's, which Macy's eventually overtook. It was or bought out or whatever. It's a department store, and I just worked there for Christmas. And I got my first real job at Polo's Market. That was a fruit market in Harper Woods. I think it's still there actually. But I worked there from September of 1968 until when was it? Oh, October 3rd, 1972. And the reason I know that is because Jimmy was born on October 6th, and I had quit work 3 days before he was born. So Jimmy was born. It was not an uneventful birth because I have seizures. I haven't had any in years and years, but I did have a lot of them in the past. And I did have one during delivery. And I delivered Jimmy on the fifth floor, but my room was on the fourth floor. And for 12 hours, they lost him. They didn't know where he was. So he was in the nursery on the fifth floor. I was down on the fourth floor. So I always say, maybe I didn't get the right baby. But and then I was pretty much a stay-at-home mom from that point on. I did have various jobs that when Jim was laid off and we needed a little bit extra money. The one job I got was my brother had got it for me at Ludington News, and it's like a distribution center for magazines for the Detroit area. I don't know if they're still in business, but it was at a time when they didn't really want women working. You had to have your safe jobs, like you were a file clerk or a typist or a secretary. But you didn't really go out into the men's world. That was for them. But we were brought up to be your own person. It didn't matter whether you were a man or woman. If you could do the job, you did the job. That's just how we were raised. And so my brother told them that I'd do a good job. So they wanted to discourage me from having the job. So the job they gave me was filling the orders for all the adult bookstores. So I thought they would embarrass me, but no, not going to happen. And I have no problem. And some of them were pretty raunchy magazines, but I didn't care. My best part that I loved about the job was the fact that if you wanted a magazine, you could have any magazine you wanted. You just had to rip the cover off and you turned the cover in for reimbursement. And so all the men in the place, if they wanted a dirty magazine, they had to come to me to fill the order. And so they had to tell me what magazine they wanted. And so if they tried to embarrass me by anything, like they'd say, oh, did you see that hot model, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say, oh, yeah, you should check out the one on page 84, And so eventually they just ignored me and just let it go. And I worked there probably 6 months. And then I went back to being a stay-at-home mom till, Jim was laid off again. And the next job I had was at a bookbinding place. So if you've ever got a book between 1978 and 1979, because I think I worked for 9 months at that job, you'll know that it was a book that I bound. And this is how you'll know. You just sat on the line and you got a stack, like about big stack like that of books. And as they went down the line, you would just put them onto the, like onto the conveyor belt. And that's all you did all day long. And it was very boring. You do that for 9 months, you go crazy. But anyway, I went to lunch, and when I came back, instead of picking up my papers like this, I picked them up like that. So they were opposite. So everything I put on the thing for the rest of the day was opposite. So like you could have been reading and you'd be on 24, but page 25 would really be upside down, page 76. And then the whole inside part of that would be all in. And I didn't realize it till about 15 minutes before my shift ended. And I never told anybody because I was afraid I'd lose my job. So if you got one of those, that would be it. And then I worked at other little small factories, between that. And then I got my real job. I say real job because that's when I really started working. Was in 1987. I started working for Montgomery Ward's. And it was funny because we didn't have insurance on the car, and I was walking up. No, we didn't have plates on the car. That was it. Our plates had expired. And I walked up to the Secretary of State office, and I got halfway there and it started raining. It was pouring rain. But I thought, I'm halfway there, I might as well finish walking. And when I got there, I saw a sign from Montgomery Ward's, which was attached to the Secretary of State, like in the same strip mall, that they were hiring for Christmas. And so I thought, I'll just go pick up an application. And so I went in to pick up the application, and they wanted to do an interview. And I said, I look like a drowned rat. This is not. And she said, no, that's okay. And they hired me on the spot. So I worked there. I started off working in the men's department, and then I became a VCB clerk, which is the vendor chargeback clerk. The things that you return, we send them back to the manufacturers. I worked in there. And then I worked myself up to being the manager of the men's department. And then I got transferred to the women's department at Eastland, which is a little mall that was by our house. And I worked there until Montgomery Ward's went out of business in 1996, I think it was. And then, excuse me, I have to answer the phone. I'm the only one here. Okay, I'm back. So I worked there till 1996. And then in 1997, my sister Denise got me a job where her best friend worked as a mail clerk. And I really liked that job. And it went through a lot of company changes, name changes, and a lot of employee changes, but somehow I stuck through it. And at one point, I had like the perfect job because I was the only one hired for the company kind of split. They kept the mailroom person, but then they got rid of all of the healthcare people, but they kept the couple working, no, they got rid of all the workman's comp people, but they only kept a couple of the healthcare people. And so I worked for a completely different company, even though it was in the same building. And I only worked 2 hours a day, but I got paid for 8. I kept telling them that, I was only working 2 hours a day, but they said it was easier just to salary me out. So that was my best job ever because I started work at 6:30 and I was home by 8:30. So I had my whole day ahead of me. And I never took vacation time because, when you get off at 8:30, you can do whatever you want for that day. And, or days off and sick days and stuff. So when that company went out of business, I got a nice little buyout, and still stayed with the same people because it's kind of strange, but like I still worked with the same people. They just had a different company name. Well, that company hired me then to do their mail, and then eventually we turned into a document scanning profession type thing. So what we would do is all the strip malls would send us all of our bills. Their bills, not our bills. Their bills, like for electricity, water, all that kind of stuff. And then we would scan the bills to India, and then India would pay the bills. And I worked there until 2013. And I probably would have stayed there longer, but I had an argument with the bosses. Well, actually just the boss, because the people higher than him agreed with me, but he never followed through with what they said about wages because I always felt I was underpaid. And to this day, I still think I was underpaid. But neither here nor there. I've always liked every job I've ever had, whether it was monotonous or not. I like working with the people. I really had a good time doing that. And I've had a pretty good life. I've been battling my weight my whole life. I really have. It's just, when I got engaged on Valentine's Day in 1970. And 1971 rather, I'm sorry. I got engaged in 1970. Take that back. I got engaged in 1970 on Valentine's Day. I weighed 145 pounds. And on my wedding day, I weighed 160. So when I got pregnant with Jimmy, I weighed 160, and I gained 25 pounds, and he weighed 10. And then I lost weight. I got back down to 175. And then I got pregnant with Danny. I almost lost him. And I just stress ate the whole pregnancy, and I gained 75 pounds. And I never really lost it. And then when I got pregnant with Christy, I was just really diligent. Danny only weighed 9 pounds 2 ounces. So, you know, he was a little baby. As far as my babies, he was little. Jimmy weighed 10 pounds. He weighed 9 too. And then when I got pregnant with Christy, I only gained 11 pounds. And she weighed 9.6. So I came home from the hospital weighing less, but I still had Danny's weight on me, and I've been fighting that my whole life. But this time I'm going to lose it. So hopefully that tells you a little bit about my work life. If there's any other things you want to know, just let me know. I don't have a problem telling you. I'm not very open about things. I'm not the least bit shy, as people can tell you. As Denise will tell you, I don't have an edit button. I don't have a problem telling you anything about what goes on with my life. And I don't know. It's just, I don't know. My best, I'll tell you this real quick. My best raise was, I was working at Eastland in the men's department, and I didn't get a raise when I got transferred over to Eastland, because that's what happened. If you get a transfer, you always got a raise, and I never got a raise. And the reason I got a raise was because this one girl was going to file a sexual harassment case, and they didn't want her to do it, so she wanted my position, so they gave her that position. So when the district manager had come into the office the one day, you know, he said, "You don't seem happy," and I, you know, expressed my desire that I should have gotten paid more money. And he says, "Well, what makes you think so?" And then I said, "I'm going to make up a name. I'm going to say, like, Mary Lou. Mary Lou was screwing Gary, which was the store manager where she was at, but she got tired of being screwed, and so then she said that she wanted to go to Ted's store, and because she was screwing Ted at the time, and so if they wouldn't do that, she was going to file a sexual discrimination case. And so, you know, they sent me over to Eastland, where I didn't want to go because it was far from my house. And so I said, you know, Stacy screwed both Ted and Gary, and then turn around, see, I said her name, Mary Lou. Well, anyway, she screwed Gary and Ted, and then turns around, I got screwed, and with all this screwing going around, the only one that didn't get any pleasure out of it was me. And he says, but I didn't say screw. I didn't want to use the language that I used, but I was very vulgar because I was very upset at the time. And he says, "Well, I can understand what you're saying. Let me check this out." And he checked it out and found out that it was true. And guess what? I got a $5,000 raise. So it did pay. But anyway, I'm babbling on now. Like I said, if you have any questions about my life, let me know. I have no problems answering them. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.